Svara is the name of the group. That is on a CD which features some tracks by them and some by another group called Geste Nevime. It's all sort of a cross between prog rock and new wave sound, and it's on the Indies label. And although this label is based in Brno, that band are actually from Teplice, which is a Bohemian town, which was apparently once a fashionable spa town that Beethoven visited.
It's turning into a geography come history lesson, Mark. Well, they certainly obeyed the first law of prog rock, which is never use one chord where 12 will do in that. It's quite entertaining, although I must say I find after about 3 or 4 minutes of that kind of music, I'm sort of reaching for the pause button myself. A little bit too clever for its own good, I feel. No comment from you there, right. The Manchester drum and bass and nice voice duo Lamb are about to release a new single called Softly, and we're not going to play it. Instead, we're going to play one of the other tracks that's included on the Softly EP single thingy. It's a Photek remix of another song from Lamb's recent Fear of Fours album. Alien was apparently written about singer Louise Rhodes' as yet unborn child while she was pregnant. A very strange experience to judge by this rather dark and doom-laden piece of music. Lamb, who are, of course, Louise Rhodes and Andy Barlow. That's a track from the second of the 2 CD singles they're bringing out, or have just brought out, bearing the track Softly. It's a bit complicated, all this single business. But that track from the album, which they recently released, called Fear of Falls, is called Alien, remixed by the excellent Rupert Parks, also known as Photek. I love that track. I think he's done a really good job on it.
So what's happened with Photek? Has he got a new album coming out?
Photek's, who is, as we know, because he told us, is an extremely slow worker and an audio perfectionist, has been working on a new album, which I think is going to be coming out early next year. It's nice that he finds time, is able to take time out to do things like that to that Lamb track, though.
Sounds more like Photek than Lamb, that track.
It does, yeah.
Now, sax player Steve Buckley and trumpeter Chris Batchelor have just put out an album called Life as We Know It. It's a really excellent listen, at times thickly orchestrated, a bit like a modern big band. At other times it's sort of quite experimental and dreamy, and tightly worked compositions sit comfortably with really inspired improvising. Maybe the way this album sounds is to do with the unusual way it was recorded. No studios involved. They just took a computer system to wherever they fancied playing and recorded straight into it. Here they're joined by drummer Mark Sanders for The Art of Flying Backwards. The Art of Flying Backwards from the album Life as We Know It by Steve Buckley and Chris Batchelor. Steve Buckley on sax, Chris Batchelor trumpet, and Mark Sanders on drums, and that's on the Baul label. And Steve Buckley and Chris Batchelor both used to be in Loose Tubes.
Ah, well, that theme I thought would make a very good one for an adult nursery rhyme. There was something strangely kind of compellingly catchy and odd at the same time about it.
I think what's really good about this album is the way they've used technology in a sort of invisible way, because what they've done with this computer system is done lots of overdubs and trickery things without you really noticing. That the riff for that song, I think, actually came from another song that they just sort of flew into this particular track and then they played over the top of it. It does have a rather strange quality. I think the riff is actually sort of put backwards, which gives it that odd sound.
So that was Seconds, was it, that one? Now, 10 years and 3 million album sales later, Peter Gabriel's Real World label has done so well that earlier this month the Real World team decided to throw a party at their Box Mill studios. And even better, they invited Mixing It down to record the event. Mark was sadly unavailable, but I gladly zoomed down the M4 in brilliant July sunshine, got lost in darkest Wiltshire, but eventually found Box and had a lovely time. The list of attendees spoke volumes for the current cultural reach of Gabriel's pet recording project. The actor Woody Harrelson, Whispering Bob Harris and the Sex Pistols graphic artist Jamie Reed probably don't rub shoulders more than about once a lifetime, but hey, nobody said Real World was an everyday kind of thing. So, Peter, 10 years of the Real World label. Are you surprised that the Real World label is still going strong after 10 years?
Surprised and happy. I mean, I guess we thought it could be done, otherwise we wouldn't have done it in the first place, but there was quite a lot of cynicism around at the time, and I think in '89 there was a growing interest for world music, but certainly in '80 when the WOMAD Festival first started, it was a much harder call.
As you say, in 1989, world music was quite a fashionable sort of coming thing. Yeah. It seems slightly less fashionable now. How do you feel Real World has ridden that slight decline in fashionability, if not popularity?
Well, I think, fortunately, sales seem to be going up for us, so it hasn't hit us in that way. And, I think fashion comes and goes, but good music is around for a long time. And in a way, the process of trying to introduce artists, not everyone is going to find a big audience, but I think everyone who explores world music will find something that they like and something that touches them.
The Real World label, obviously, it's the albums are very stylishly produced. I mean, you can tell a Real World album by its cover, really. I mean, just looking at it, there's a wonderful sort of generic feel to the artwork. Do you ever worry that after 10 years, the label isn't in some cases rather bigger than the artists that it showcases?
I think we're a nursery, and the artists will outgrow us and become something else. But I felt very strongly that we should make the label look different. And one of the things that I've always believed is that the visuals of an album are very important. And when you see a CD with a lot of text over it, sometimes it looks like a piece of advertising. So we had a rule which has been broken partially, but rarely, to keep text off the sleeves and let the image speak for itself.
The passing of those two trains reminds me, Peter, of a question which we must ask, because we are going to be looking around the studios and talking a bit about the studios. Why on earth did you park this beautiful recording complex within about 50 yards of the Great Western Railway?
I always wanted a challenge. But we were looking for about 3 years. I was renting a sort of dairy building on a farm about 5 miles away from here, and the landlords wanted us out, so we were looking for quite a while. And I've always loved water, and I actually think water's important for a lot of artists. It seemed a great foundation. The real downside here was obviously the railway line, but because we've been looking for a long time and we loved the water and the situation around here, we made the decision and got some evaluation on soundproofing costs, which were hopelessly wrong. And 2 of the rooms here, which are generally let out to the public, are well soundproofed and you don't hear the trains. But my spaces, you know, the only way you keep the trains out is to make a box within a box and lose all the stone walls and some of the daylight and so on. So I just decided to bite the bullet, enjoy a little live performance from a few train drivers.
So I'm now standing outside the main studio at Box Mill, where we're about to have a bit of a press conference in the company of, among others, Simon Emerson of Afro Celt Sound System and Sheila Chandler.
I think when world music first started, there was a great assumption that the longer it took you to get the tape back home, the more valuable it was. That field recordings somehow had a kind of aura of authenticity which other recordings made in environments like this couldn't provide. A lot of us have grown up with pop music. We choose to make alternative types of music because that's what excites us. But there is, I think, always somewhere a sense of structure that comes in from pop music, just as pop music via samples is starting to take from world music. And I think it's absolutely marvellous that what Real World has been beginning to support over the years has gone away from authentic field-type recordings and towards modern fusion sounds that come from people who live in Europe.
Can I answer that? I mean, you know, personally, to put the other side of the argument, you know, I love a good field. I can't beat it. And some of the best recordings I've done have been field recordings. In fact, you know, when I first went to Senegal working with Baul, the studio was so inadequate. We were effectively recording in a field. You know, I mean, we did Volume 1 in the garden shed out the back, didn't we?
That's right, yeah.
Very good it was too. Very nice garden shed.
Every time I've been to Real World, there's been a wonderful eating opportunity, and today is no exception. I'm sitting having a delicious cooked barbecue in a marquee in the grounds of the studio. I've finished now, and I'm just going to go off and listen to what I'm told is a very exciting new Real World prospect called Tama.
Yang means opposite. You're
Right.
old.
Yeah.
Yang. Yungchen means melody or songs.
All right.
Then Lhamo, Lhimo,
Yeah.
goddess.
So you're the goddess of song.
I try.
So here I am sitting in this really quite beautiful penthouse recording suite at the top of Box Mill, which is Peter Gabriel's personal recording studio with lots of little nooks and crannies where Bedouins and others can go and hang out and play their instruments. And I'm sitting here with John Leckie. I'm sure we all own at least half a dozen John Leckie produced albums, and John's done quite a bit of work over the years for the Real World label, which is why he's here for this 10th anniversary bash. John, you've worked for Real World and with Real World artists. What's it like as a working experience compared to working for artists on other labels?
Well, it's wonderful, really. It's a very open environment, and the performance is often the thing. It's what we want to capture. The records are done quite quickly. I mean, they're done maybe in a day or maybe 3 or 4 days, and the object of making the record is to bring out the best performance in the artist, make it sound like their best concert.
Peter Gabriel was made much play of the fact that he used to have a slogan. I think it was high-tech handmade or handmade high-tech. How high-tech is the gear here?
It's about as high-tech as you can get, really. It really is state-of-the-art in all respects. I mean, this desk here, there's Sony digital desk. I don't know how many channels it's got. It's probably got 108 channels, and it really is state-of-the-art. It's more state-of-the-art than probably any other studio in Britain, if not in the world.
Do you need a 108-channel digital desk to record the sort of performance that you've been talking about?
Well, you don't, of course. But it's the quality, it's the resolution, all the little nuances of the sound that come across, particularly when everything is put under the microscope, and people have very sophisticated hi-fis and even Walkmans. You know, most people listen to music on the Walkman, and it brings out every single little detail of the sound, and that is why the technology in the studio and the recording process has to cope with that. You have to record everything to that fine resolution so it can all be heard. And of course here there's lots of high-tech instruments, there's lots of ethnic instruments. You know, there's probably every kind of African drum hanging up on the wall, and
it's like an adventure playground for musicians, really, isn't it?
And there's also this great contacts with everyone. You know, if you want a conga player, you know, you can go into the office and say, I need a conga player, and they say, oh yeah, do you mean African conga or Latin American conga, or, you know, Cameroon conga or Moroccan conga? So there is this whole wealth of musician contact that you can draw on as well for rock sessions and things. So, you know, it's a great resource, you know, the whole place.
So while the Real World 10th anniversary party rages outside, I'm inside talking to Amanda Jones, who's the head of the Real World label. The process of actually signing acts, releasing records, how does that work here? I mean, dealing with music which still appeals largely to a minority taste, choosing the ones that you are going to give the Real World sort of nod to must be quite a weighty responsibility, isn't it?
I think we're both interested in the records which have more potential crossover appeal, perhaps more commercial appeal, but we're also interested in another strand of music which has a purity and a passion and a quality in itself, regardless of its commercial appeal.
Is there any thought that you might actually be better off splitting off and sort of designing specialist labels under the Real World umbrella to take care of those different areas?
Certainly, that has been something of great debate here for many, many years, and we've considered it many times, long and hard. And there are many reasons why we haven't decided to do that at this point. We didn't want to differentiate between a kind of A league and a B league, you know, those that sell a significant number and those that we know will only sell to a kind of catalogue audience, if you like. We've considered releasing things under a dance label and a kind of classical music label. But there's always been arguments against doing that, which make us want to have Real World Records as a name expand, and that the artists help us to expand our definition of what we do. The fact that we've worked with the American singer-songwriter Joseph Arthur on the Real World Records label has been quite a difficult decision, because we know that it's a risk and a challenge to put an artist such as that under the Real World banner. And, you know, we're just delighted that Joseph has actually helped Real World Records to expand its definition of its terms.
But my daddy on Prozac, I don't think I want him back. Make me feel dangerous. Make me feel dangerous. But my daddy on Prozac.
talking specifically about individual projects, mention some of the releases that have surprised you with the success that they've achieved, and possibly some that you thought would be more successful that haven't been.
The first record by the Musicians of the Nile, a demanding listen, if ever there was one, of fantastic but really kind of visceral, powerful, traditional Egyptian music, has sold a really significant number of copies over the life of the album, and it's still doing so.
What do you call a significant number of
Well, for a record like that, it's sold, you know, well in excess of, 25,000 copies, which is fantastic that number of people have really been passionate as we are about that music.
أول فتوح الجنين أول فتوح الجنين زغرة الياسمين والنرجس اشتكى والفل قال يا مين لابس ثوبك الأسود وقال على الأبيض حزين على مين على ورق الفل دلال وما حملش الذل ده يعني أنا على ورق الفل دلال وما حملش الذل ده يعني.
I think that there are some records that we feel should have done better because I feel they have a massive appeal. The album Real Sugar by Sam Mills and Paban Baul, one of the most beautiful records that we've recorded melodically, in every sense, I would think appeals to a huge audience, has just not found that niche, has not found a route of exposure, which I'd hoped. The band really didn't kind of do a significant amount of live work. That may not have helped.
Do you have any sense now, after 10 years, of what actually, how the marketing channels, what actually leads people to certain releases? I mean, how does your music get got? Given that Mixing It is one of the few programmes, sadly, that actually plays your releases on the radio, certainly in this country, how do people get to know about it? You know, what's the big push? Where does it come from?
I would guess that word of mouth is still the strongest route for people to get into the music that we release. I think that's probably true of an awful lot of music, actually. Recommendation and just people kind of getting into things. Obviously, from our point of view, the symbiosis with the WOMAD Festival is a fantastic opportunity to get music exposed and to just get an audience prepared to open their ears to all sorts of different things. I think we've improved our profile at retail. The fact that we can now be seen as a real world in a lot of the big stores, because we're now up to, nearly 90 releases, means that we have a kind of weight. Perhaps people over this period of time have trusted what the label does. That now that they know that if they pick up a real record, it may be challenging listening, it may be fantastically accessible, but certainly it'll be interesting, it'll be curious, and it will be of a quality.
And there, if nothing else, that goes to show what a long way the Real World label has come in 10 years. That was a marvellous Aki Nawaz remix of Longing, a track from Nusrat, Fateh Ali Khan and Michael Brook's album Star Rise. That's from the album called Remixed. And while we're actually on the air, as I told you earlier, the WOMAD Festival's happening at Reading, and I'm delighted to say that Radio 3 is actually recording it, and you can hear highlights next weekend.
Now, I know from speaking to Mixing It listeners that David Sylvian has a lot of fans out there. Well, for all of you, here's a sneak preview of a 5-track EP called Godman, which comes out in September. 3 of the tracks are remixes of Godman, which was on his last excellent album, Dead Bees on a Cake. But here's one of the new tracks. It's called Northfield, and it evokes a rather spooky electronic atmosphere with a spoken vocal by Sylvian's wife, Ingrid Chavez. Northfield by David Sylvian, which is on a 5-track EP called Godman, which comes out in September, and that's on the Virgin label. I must say the synth textures there reminded me a bit of Vangelis' score for Blade Runner.
Yeah, they also reminded me of the track before it, because of course they are exactly the same synth textures. It's David Sylvian singing on that track, and it's remarkable actually how different the two tracks sound when you put Ingrid Chavez's slightly spooky noirish poetry and David Sylvian's signature dark, croony voice. Incredible the difference in the effect.
And David Sylvian's track is called Shadowland.
Yes, it's much more warming than his wife's.
Now, if you'd like a playlist with information on all the tracks we've played, you can get one by emailing us, mixing.it@bbc.co.uk, or look us up on the website, www.bbc.co.uk/radio3/mixing. Or you can use Royal Mail. Write to us, BBC Broadcasting House, London W1A1AA, or CFAX, page 652.
I wouldn't trust those stamps if I were you. Now, we leave you tonight on a light and frankly ludicrous note with an artist currently known as Yossarian. This is the latest stage name, apparently, of Tim London, a man who seems to have spent most of his 37 years listening to records by Vivian Stanshall, researching music hall musical etiquette, and gazing longingly at the artwork of Gilbert and George. Put that together, and this is what you get. Very, very silly, I say. Good night.
Good night.
Young girl dressed like a public schoolboy, from Mr. Chips, Just William and two old gents. Young girl paid to put on a show, from black and white Soho for the impresario. Sporting a bruise and slightly scuffed shoes. I'm following you, you are Gilbert and George. You've got to walk fast to catch Gilbert and George. They're two fit old geezers. Move fast to catch Gilbert and George before they leave us. Oh, what a pair of tarts. The iron don't work, but the whispering grass told me, hanging white fronts over the stove. You are Gilbert and George. Walk on, walk on, and walk on. Walk on. And this is where, and this is where, and that, and then this. Fit old geezers. Gilbert and George. Fit old geezers. Gilbert and George. Fit old geezers. You are Gilbert and George.
That was Gilbert and George by Yossarian. And that ends tonight's Mixing It, presented by Robert Sandall and Mark Russell. The producer was Felix Carey. This is BBC Radio 3. Time now for Jazz on 3.
Good evening. Tonight, a drummer who made his name in prog rock, Bill Bruford, brings the latest version of his well-respected jazz group, Earthworks, to the stables in Wavendon. We've an appreciation of the jazz photograph from writer Jeff Dyer, and tonight's landmark recalls a coming together of the 60s new jazz scene and the rhythms of Africa. Bill Bill Bruford is a man who's used his fame and perhaps fortune to further his life's true musical passion, jazz. Bruford was famously the drummer of those monsters of rock pretension, yes, surely the role models for Spinal Tap and the curse of 1970s university halls. He also played briefly with Genesis and then to great and continuing acclaim with Gong and King Crimson. In the late 70s, he set up his own band, named it after himself, and took on the guitarist Alan Holdsworth, which brings us to 1986 and the formation of the first version of Earthworks. I spoke to Bill before the gig about the band's role as a springboard for young talent.
I think the young British guys view me as a kind of Art Blakey, a sort of grandfather who has this vehicle called Earthworks, which can give them a bit of an international platform.
I suppose the difference between you and Art Blakey is that having formed Earthworks in '86 with Ian Bellamy and Django Bates, Tim Harris, you pretty much stuck with that group for 4 albums, didn't you?
We did, yes. We had four odd albums, and then there was a bit of a lull because King Crimson, the rock group with which I'm occasionally associated, lurched into action. And during that intermission, the band personnel changed, and we now have a second edition of Earthworks with new young players, Steve Hamilton on keyboards, Patrick Clahar, sometimes known for his work with Incognito on tenor saxophone and soprano saxophone, and also man of the minute Mark Hodgson on bass.
What interests me is I remember talking to you in the early 90s about Earthworks, and I know that you, when you were writing for the group, you very much had those musicians in mind, and obviously Django Bates, Ian Bellamy, very distinctive players. So you did 4 albums with those guys, and now it's really it's a brand new band, so presumably you're having to sort of think differently when you write now.
Entirely so. What you said is quite true, but there is a downside to that for me personally, or as a drummer leader, which is that I became very dependent upon Django and Ian, specifically making the gig, which is not always possible to do in the jazz world. Django began to ascend to the dizzy heights of fame that he is at now, and therefore it was very difficult to book him for a single Friday night in Penge. Without a large bribe or a substantial tour behind it, it was very difficult to offer the kind of work that was necessary. The band did change. We have now a more conventional lineup. Django and Ian were very idiosyncratic and produced a lot of particular sound around which the band was formed. That now has been really changed somewhat to the more traditional tenor saxophone, piano, bass and drums lineup, which is a quartet sound that I still adore. And I still think there's plenty that you can do with those particular instruments. That also offers you a very mobile group and is one that can function quite easily.
It's interesting,
as opposed to taking tons of equipment about.
It's interesting you pick up on that, because the new album and the concert is well, for want of a better phrase, certainly more straight ahead. I guess the old Earthworks had perhaps a stronger connection with the sort of your art rock days. It's certainly a slightly more quirky sound. So, is that something that you're going to miss, do you think, from playing in this straight-ahead context?
It's time I missed it. Yes, I am leaving the rock background, and somehow I only seem to be able to do it in stages. And I think Earthworks Edition 1 was a stage of separation from the quirkiness of art rock, as you so delightfully put it. And there was an element of that in it, no doubt about it. In fact, there still is an element. I mean, my background is my background. I can't choose or wish another background. It's what it is, and I'm quite happy and proud of that. And that is as legitimate an influence in jazz as if you were a Norwegian saxophone player or a guy from Mississippi or something. It's a background. It's something you bring to jazz, and I hope to bring that background to both Earthworks, the new and the old edition. But yes, the electronic stuff's gone, and yes, I would prefer to trade or